is Norwich Confidential with your hosts, Dr. Ben Hong, Bonnie Hong, and Mr. Bob Farwell. I'm Bonnie Hong.
And Bob Farwell is still
missing in action.
On
leave.
He'll probably come back with Brian Williams.
We were just talking about the train derailment because you were supposed to take that train this morning up to Boston,
Well, yes, that is quite tragic. Well, I don't really know what the details are, but I was supposed to take a train from New London to Boston this morning, and all of a sudden we heard that the train or the schedule was canceled because the train derailed in Philadelphia. And so in any case, what they did is they took a train, another train from New York City, and take that to Boston, which I boarded in
New London.
But I didn't realize
how many were killed?
There was a few. I'm not sure, 6 maybe or something like that. I haven't even read it yet, but that's what I heard in the train station. So that's really quite a tragedy again.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that should not have happened. But in any case, so we were at a hearing, I think, Bonnie.
Brings us right into transportation, Ben.
Right, 10 days ago or something like that.
Right.
And so why don't you explain that, because you were the one who wrote me over that.
We went to the hearing at City Hall for the State Transportation Commission, and it really was very interesting. A lot of points about where our transportation needs were brought up. We had our former Congressman Rob Simmons spoke. He was very passionate about increasing the rail service, the shoreline service.
And that I remember that about a couple of years ago they used to have a rallying
cry
for one more stop, meaning that from Old Saybrook to New London, because for a long time this shoreline train comes from New York City and all the way to New Haven, and then would stop only in Old Saybrook.
You never come down to New London.
Right. Well, now it did about maybe a year ago, and now Rob Simmons and part of that area there in Stonington.
Well, Mystic Seaport.
Right.
Westerly, people from Westerly came to speak.
And yeah, and that would be nice, because that, I think the local commuter would really benefit from that, because the only way that you can get the railway between say, for instance, the shoreline area all the way to New York would probably be Amtrak, and it's very expensive.
Very expensive. The difference between Amtrak and the North Shore.
Yeah, and the Metro North.
Metro North is such a huge difference.
Exactly. And, you know, so I would say that if that train does go all the way up to Westerly, the passengers from that shoreline area would really benefit Mystic and so on.
I think it'll help increase tourism.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it.
And they can connect also from here to going to New Haven, and then take the train going up to Hartford or Springfield. So that's very good.
Right.
But
and that was only one part of the transportation needs that were discussed.
That's right. But from what I heard also, that there's maybe 10 years from now, there's going to be a train coming from New London all the way up to the side of the river up north.
We're hopeful.
We're hopeful, because there's already that plan.
Right.
And
I think Norwich kind of gets shorted in the transportation.
Hopefully they will make a stop in Norwich. But that's a private line that's going to be sometime.
But I think if the demand
is
there, if they actually have it all the way up to, where was it, Worcester and
I think it
Webster.
Right. Supposedly it should go all the way to Montreal, but
that would
for
be
now
wonderful.
it will be in Vermont for now. But we also were told, this was a very nice informational meeting, because we were also told about the seat, you know, the bus.
Seat buses.
Schedules, and certainly there's a lot of demand for that, and obviously they showed us the amount of rides and people riding this, and it's really by the millions after 1 year, and in a year's span.
Right.
but it still is quite limited in its route, and not only that, but also in the scheduling of the timing, because they all quit at, say, what, 6 o'clock?
There's no buses after 7 p.m.
Right,
ever.
and so it looked like transportation like ceases after that.
Yeah,
when
there
it
is
gets
none.
dark. So that's also another issue, because there are some workers that get out of work after 7, and how can you just come in by bus and then not go,
Right.
not being able to go home?
Right.
So it's another issue that they addressed.
As well as, for example, we have Three Rivers Community
Right.
College that serves all of southeastern Connecticut, and yet when you've got a lot of students coming in from New London that are trying to get up here, and some of them, literally will take them almost 2 hours just to get up here by bus.
That's right.
So they're going to be putting in express routes from New London all the way up, which will obviously cut down the time considerably. But the express routes that they're looking at, the extended hours of service, people don't realize how necessary the transportation issue is. I think, were you surprised by the number of people that attended the hearing?
I was quite surprised, and I didn't
Yeah.
expect that, because it was not even publicized. I didn't even hear about it until you told me that there's going to be a hearing. And so when we went to this meeting room in the City Hall, the room was packed.
It was packed.
And I can understand that. A lot of people actually spoke, and I was really quite impressed.
Yeah.
But going back to Three Rivers, we would think that Three Rivers is just a kind of a local area, regional area, but it's not really so, because students actually come from all four corners of the state.
Of the state.
It's amazing, because they do have courses that are quite unique. They have the 3-year nursing course, which is only offered, I think, one of the 2 that is offered in the state. So a lot, and there are a lot of veterans that goes there using the GI Bills.
They have wonderful, Three Rivers has incredible programs for the veterans. They
Yes.
really have special services. They have a special office. They cater to the veteran that comes
Right.
there.
Exactly. So with the improvement in the public transportation, I would say that that's going to be a big plus also for Norwich, and I'm just hoping that it will go through. There were a few concerns, of course, obviously how much is going to cost the state when Governor Malloy is trying to cut back on all the expenses and so on and so on. But I hope it will be overcome, because the problem with transportation, or the non-transportation, is huge. Coming from a country like the Philippines, we have problems with transportation there, and you know that when there is a season for fruits to come out, I mean, they are by the tons, If the mango season comes in, I mean, you got tons and tons, literally tons of mangoes, and they all get ripe all at the same time. And if there's no transportation to bring them to the market, they all just kind of rot in the area. So that becomes an economic issue. And so in our case here, of course, that it's more like to serve the public, but how can you get the public to get further education or go to work if you do not have transportation? And besides, it's not having everyone be in a bus is probably a better idea, because it saves energy and so on, whereas if everyone drives around with their car, then they will emit more pollutions and so on. So it will benefit everybody.
Right. And even the pollution issue is a good point to talk just a little bit again about climate change. It is one of my hot topics, but I was really very surprised and pleased to see the latest petition that a number of veterans groups have now begun circulating, both fighting for climate change and environmental protections, because of the number of coal mines that are going in Colorado into our federal reserves, that are getting permits to go in and mine on federal land that's basically our land, And when you read the petitions by the veterans, they make a very heartfelt appeal that they were willing to sacrifice for this country, but not to come back and have the land that they just fought for being desecrated by corporations that are polluting the environment and continuing to add to climate change. So it was kind of a surprise to me.
Well, managing of natural resources has always been a very challenging thing to do, and in any form of government, whether it be the United States or places like Indonesia or India, really being able to manage intelligently what the resources has to offer is going to be difficult, and it's going to be very difficult here in the United States as well.
Well, even in California, when you look at Nestle Corporation and there's another Desante Water, both of them get their water from California. So, you know, you look at the drought that's going on in California, the fact that residents have to, they're actually on limited water supply, and the millions of gallons that are poured into bottled water to be sold back to Californians is pretty despicable. But to me, you know, it's also an opportunity. I think you and I talked about this once a while ago, about the fact that a green economy is not just all electric cars. A green economy would include things like actually making water, being able to take desalinated water or desalinate water and actually have really good drinking water.
Well, that should be what we should be doing. Every time we manufacture something, we should also look at what the environment or how it will affect the environment. And so the time really is, those times are gone when you can just chop down any tree you like and then cut them to pieces and throw everything away, the bark and so on, and just let it lay on the environment. Those times should no longer be allowed. And if somebody is going to harvest, say, a forest, then they should also at the same time have a plan on reforesting the area that they just harvested. And not only that, but be able to give us a sustainability study on what they're doing is not only going to be replaced, but also that it doesn't harm the environment. And so if we had those kind of policy, and rather than allowing the big corporations to tell our government with the big lobbyists that says, well, we would like to drill something out of that forest.
We need to frack here. We
Right.
need to
Well,
put a coal mine in there.
They should also present to us a plan on, number one, environmental study, number two, sustainability, and three, how they're going to take care of their waste and do something to improve the environment after that. So that's the whole package that they should be presenting.
But they don't. And it's not just ground waste, groundwater toxic waste. It's also air waste.
Yes.
I mean, every time they do any mining, you have immense amounts of methane that are released into the air. And yet methane, if they were smart and could capture all that methane, there'd be even more natural gas.
Yes.
Because that's what natural gas, it's
Yes.
my understanding that's what natural gas is. But they don't. They just waste it because that's not what they're specifically mining for.
So it should start at the, if the national government, the federal government is not doing that at this time, because obviously they have so much lobbyists, these big corporations have so much lobbyists that all they get to do is get a permit to get into that forest and dig whatever they want to do. It should start in the small town, say like for instance in Norwich area, New London County. So if we have somebody who wants to dig up something here, then they should present to us the entire package of not just the dig and so on. They have to tell us where they're going to get the water from, how they're going to eliminate that water, how they're going to clean up the environment and get all the waste and forest the area and so on and so on. And sure, then
You
we
would
will
not
look
be
into it.
See, Republicans wouldn't be happy with you.
Well,
They don't want any regulation
it
at all.
creates job. And if what they're saying is, well, we are going to dig something out of that national forest because it will give us some oil or whatever it is, and that will create jobs. Well, putting back the forest creates better jobs as well.
Exactly.
And it's good for all of us. So that should be part of everything. Well, in any case, that's just a one person or two persons' opinion.
I can go over just a couple of the votes that occurred in Congress this past week. In the Senate, you had the 2016 budget resolution, and they voted to proceed with this. What that means is the Senate agreed to proceed to the conference report on the resolution that would reduce spending by $5.3 trillion over the next 10 years. Out of that $5.3 trillion, $2 trillion of that would be in reductions because they would simply get rid of the 2010 health care or Obamacare. So they're planning on getting rid of our health care system that has made health care, I'm not thrilled with it. However, because I still think we need single payer, but what this does is just eliminate, I don't know how many millions of people that have finally just gotten insurance. They will no longer, again, have the ability to have insurance, but it makes the part of our Senate and House and Senate very happy. But I should tell you, I'm thrilled that both of our senators did vote no on that. However, the vote was 53 to 44, so it did pass. But I doubt whether that budget will ever see, I hope that budget would never see the light of day.
Well, I doubt it, because Obama really will have to either sign it or not sign it, and if he doesn't sign it, then the government will be shut down again, like what happened before. So the question really is, well, what budget amount can you live with or without? And that becomes a big issue, because now we're back to lobbyists lobbying for their favorite companies.
For their little companies.
Health insurances, whatever it is.
But you know,
it's always the poor guy that has without lobbyists that will suffer, such as, for instance, the disabled people, and so
the
those elderly. Of course, foods. They no longer call it food stamps, but it's a nutritional assistance.
Right, the WIC programs.
Right. So we will have to watch out for those, because how we treat our elderly really determines how we define ourselves as a civilized nation, and that basically comes down to social as well as national ability to maintain our needed people, especially.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what I really don't have anything against the 1%, but why should they have so much? And in one person, how much can they accumulate?
How much can you spend? How much can you use?
Right.
But there was the reason that they get away with it so often, the reason why people keep supporting the kinds of policies that are passed, that are actually not in the interest of the people they represent. The reason people still vote for them is there's a quote that said, "Those that do not have property or wealth believe that they have the ability to eventually achieve it." So they protect the idea of the rich rather than the reality of themselves being poor.
Well, it's always been the American dream, Bunny.
That is
what drives every American to do something.
Yes, but it is a dream. And without having an education, a chance, enough food, enough money in your paycheck so that you can feed yourself or your family, that dream is not possible.
Well, but it still is a dream because it still is in the realm of possibility. If you go to places like Indonesia or other places, or even the Philippines, where you really do not have that dream, it doesn't exist.
And they've completely given up.
And
but when the American people still, you cannot keep a dream. You have to face reality. It's like face the reality of climate change. Face the reality of the environmental damage that's done. Face the reality of what is really happening, instead of thinking if you protect the rich, you could be there. Yeah, you could.
Well,
If you stand a better chance at buying a lottery ticket.
Well, is it really true, or is it just that we're not really giving them enough information? I would recommend that if you really want to watch a very funny show, and that would be John Oliver.
Oh, I love his show.
His segment on surveillance. I'm not going to say anything about that, but if you do have the chance to watch it, surveillance, and that would be the best way to express why most Americans really do not know or don't really care much about what the NSA is doing, but they do have a way of... But they do get concerned if something happens and it affects them. So I'm not going to say.
Let you know, this is very confidential. This is very confidential, but it's called Penisgate.
That's, in any case, so what's that?
Okay.
Okay. What else do you
So
have?
that was one of the resolutions. The other one that did pass is the Iran nuclear agreement. That one passed 98-1. So there was a lot of protest because
98 of what?
This was in the Senate vote,
Yeah.
right? To pass the agreement, but the caveats here are that it would give Congress the right to deny relief of sanctions to Iran if 2/3 the majority of both chambers oppose the final terms of the deal. Now, what this does mean, however, is that you now have a real solid backing for approaching issues like this through a diplomatic avenue, rather than continuing to do things that push us back into another war. And we were really close, whether people understand it or not. We were getting very close because of the more tension. And Iran was going to be the next country we were going to go in and take care of. But now diplomacy has worked. There are still very strong issues here that both the Senate, the House, and the Senate will be following. And the bill does demand detailed reports on Iran's support of global terrorism and fulfillment of commitments under any agreement. So, I mean, there are still there's still strong language in this, but it does show that there is a real effort to use diplomacy first, which I think for all of us, that's a good thing.
Now, in return, of course, is that immediately all sanctions will be removed against Iran. Is that right?
That ongoing, they once they've completed their part, then sanctions would be removed. The sanctions are not being removed until after the inspections have been done, until after they've complied. And so I think that's a really good start.
So, well, we'd like to hear from you if you really have more information about that, because I really don't have more information.
Or if you have opinions, give us a call. Our number will be up on the screen. There's our number. So you can always call in and join the conversation, or pick up on something that you think is really important. The other thing I did have, was a letter that I had received. It's a copy of the letter that 140 some odd of our congressmen signed and sent to President Obama, absolutely opposing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and for some very good reasons, because Congress has to have input. I mean, by our Constitution. It's the responsibility of Congress to make trade. This cannot just be by an executive order. It is under the purview of Congress. But beyond traditional tariff issues, the policies that are included in the Trans-Pacific Partnership relate to labor, patents, copyright, land use, food, agriculture, product standards, natural resources, the environment, professional licensing, competition, state-owned enterprises, and government procurement policies, as well as financial, healthcare, energy, e-commerce, telecommunications, and other service sector regulations. This has very little to do with tariffs.
That's us, Bunny. That we do all of those.
The government does.
Wow.
But what they're doing is giving up what our democratic government normally will do, and just saying, okay, we'll let the trade partnership do it instead. Let me explain it just a little bit further. Fast track would have let President Obama, which has let the last three presidents just sign trade agreements. The fast track expired, I think it was in 2007 or 2008. It expired, so Obama cannot just sign a trade agreement without the approval of Congress. What he wants to do is to, again, pass fast track so that a trade agreement would then be presented to Congress. Congress would only have one option, vote it up or down. That's it. They would have no input in it. Because of the volume of papers, you could probably guess that maybe 10 people in Congress would be able to get through all of it before the vote. So I mean, it's really scary. Let me give you some examples, real-world examples of what these trade agreements have already done. Because of, I don't remember the exact definition of these initials, but ISDS is the legal authority. It's a group of, I think it's 3 or 7 lawyers that will arbitrate. And so if you have a dispute, you do not go to the court. If a company, a corporation, a foreign corporation has a dispute with a regulation that exists in the United States, they could simply go to ISDS, not an American court, and have it arbitrated there. These are real examples of how this works. There's a very large mining company that wanted to do some blasting off the coast of Nova Scotia, but the Canadian government would not provide the permits for it because they believed that the blasting would not only harm the local environment, but it would scare off the fish that local fishermen depended their livelihood on. Well, this mining company went to ISDS and not the Canadian court to challenge the permit decision. And last month, the international panel ruled in favor of the mining company, and it's a decision that cannot be challenged by the Canadian courts. Now, how absurd is that? That it's in Canada, it's under Canadian law, but because of that trade agreement, I mean, I'd be ripping that trade agreement up so fast, it wouldn't be funny. I mean, and then now the Canadian taxpayers have to pay $300 million in damages to this mining company that hasn't been hurt in any way. They were simply denied a permit. That is what is in this TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade agreement, are these kinds of issues where things are taken out of the American court and given to this international panel of corporate lawyers. It's really frightening. But that's not just one. Let me give you a few more. A French company sued Egypt after Egypt raised its minimum wage. Do you remember the protests in Egypt? Mm-hmm. Because the workers absolutely needed better incomes. Egypt passed a increased their minimum wage, and now this French company, because it's going to cost them more to do business in Egypt, is now suing Egypt. A Swedish company sued Germany because Germany wanted to phase out nuclear power for safety reasons. Germany has one of the largest solar systems now in the world. They're getting off oil. They want to get rid of their nuclear energy because it's not as safe, obviously, as solar. You have whole cities and regions in Germany now that are run totally by solar. And this Swiss company, who obviously is part of the nuclear plant, is now suing them. A Dutch company sued the Czech Republic because the Czech Republic didn't bail out a bank that the Dutch company partially owned. Because that bank was not bailed out, they had a loss of income. So the Dutch company is now suing the Czech Republic. But this one is the best of all, and we saw all of this with Philip Morris. Right now, it's being used, that international panel of lawyers. Philip Morris is using them to stop countries like Australia and Uruguay from implementing new rules that are intended to cut smoking rates, because the new laws might eat into their tobacco giant profits. These are already happening, and these are the kinds of things that are in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I know that many of you still have not heard about it, because every time I mention it off the show, just in...
Well, the question really is if our president is so supportive of this partnership and agreement, and maybe a few other people, who's going, what is the benefit to them for having this kind of agreement?
For the corporations?
Is it going to be American corporations that's going to ultimately be benefiting from this, or is this the American workers?
It's not the American workers. Our jobs, we'll lose more jobs.
Well, who's going to benefit if this ever?
It'll be the corporations
so
as
it will
an entity.
Corporations, but they're American corporations, though.
That are
they're not using American workers.
That's right, and they don't even consider, if they're American corporations, they would have some loyalty to this country. They don't. Their only loyalty is to the bottom line and their profit.
Well, the thing that they're doing also, of course, is that I can see that it's really not going to benefit the American workers, because obviously the unions are having not supporting this, and as a matter of fact, the union threatened the Democratic Party that we're going to withhold our support if you're ever going to get through this one.
Passes.
So we are talking about, well, maybe copyright rights and patents and piracy, anti-piracy things, and it will benefit our music industry or maybe a movie industry. So who's going to ultimately benefit from this? And this is a major issue, because we would say, well, at least some American corporations are going to benefit from this, and therefore they're going to end up paying taxes anyways to our government.
Yeah, they're international corporations.
Unfortunately, that is not the case, because what they will do, even if they're American corporations, if they have headquarters somewhere in Europe or in somewhere in Southeast Asia, they will use that as where they have their money stored, and unless they bring that profit into the United States, that money that they made cannot be taxed. It will be taxed on paper, but not until they bring it into the United States. So in the end, we really do not benefit. That's what I think.
We don't. Because even with the things you talked about, like copyright laws and patent laws, they have a disastrous effect, because what I've read, like particularly the patent laws, many of the pharmaceutical companies want their American patents to be extended through this partnership for another, I don't know how many more years out, which means that even if we said that the patent is now expired, that would not matter. So that the cost of drugs and cost of medication would stay increasingly high for much longer periods of time, You would not be able to have a genetic equivalent, making life-saving drugs more available. That's why they want it. You know, everything in this is to increase their profit. The only thing that a trade agreement should be doing is one simple thing: traditional tariffs. If you want to trade with me, okay, I'll trade with you, and I won't charge a tariff for you to bring your products into the country, and you don't charge me to ship my products into yours. That's a trade agreement. Simple. The rest of this has all been written by corporate lawyers for their benefit. What does our natural resources, our product standards, our food, our agriculture, our environment, professional licensing, all of this is in there for only one reason, so that every time any of these things interfere with their business practice, no matter how bad or how shoddy or how it affects our country, we have nothing to say about it. We can't even bring them to court here.
Well, it's the same thing as what happened to Canada, of course.
Right.
You know, so if you have a trade agreement with, say, a big corporation, and they come in and they chop down your redwood tree
And leave it. Right.
leave it, and they can, on their way out, they can sue you and tell you that, well, gee,
You didn't have enough.
you didn't have enough redwoods for us to cut down.
We thought there were more redwoods, so you didn't have enough. We didn't make the profit we expected. If we don't start really, I mean, because one of the other things that's prohibited within this TPP agreement that I think is the most outrageous is that you cannot advertise Made in America. You cannot promote products because they're made in America.
Oh,
If
no.
we don't start doing it.
Oh, no, and I only buy made in the USA.
You used to.
Well,
Everything
I still
you
do.
bought was made in the USA.
I still do.
As often as we can,
If
but
we can find them.
we can't. I mean, there are things. The last grill that you bought, you went out looking for. I forgot the name of the manufacturer.
Right.
But it was. You loved the grill. It was made in America. We still
Yeah.
use it. But you wanted a second one, and when we went out and you looked for it, it was no longer made in America.
Well, that's correct. And
Shipped out.
for a long, long time, I've been looking for made in the USA shoes. But now I changed my
I know
flavor.
you like
Now
the
I'm
Italian,
made in Italy. So
I
because
know.
I cannot find a made in the USA shoes.
but they are. They are here. I actually did a search the other night for American apparel, and I was really surprised. Do you know that there's actually a shoe manufacturer in Connecticut? That I was
Wow.
shocked. I was really shocked. So I did see some of them. I'd love to be have them get some better designers, but the shoes are made here. So
Well, the thing that I can really see that is up and running and really is still running very well and in manufacturing segment of the U.S. economy, and that's made in the USA, are guns and rifles.
guns, yeah, they're
I mean, you look at every brand and it's made in the USA.
doing an incredible job of.
So even those that are foreign brands, they're still
like-
made in the USA. So I'd say let's support
Our gun,
our local sheriff.
let's support our local. Well, we do that anyway. We do really appreciate our local. Can I, since we're talking about the police for just a minute, can I deviate and just because I did have a meeting today concerning the carnival that's coming to Norwich next week. It'll start actually next Thursday, but there was a department head meeting where all the different departments make sure that they coordinate. They do a lot of work for the carnival, and I have to tell you, Public Works and just the we have wonderful people that do work for our city. We really truly do. I don't know how I got from guns to that one, but I lost my train of thought, Ben. You looked at me that and I just kind of got all, I forgot. Okay, anyway,
right.
back to
The city of Norwich.
City of Norwich, because there is a special council meeting, well, there will be on the council meeting on May 18th. I don't know how many of you have seen the petition that was put on change.org sometime in April. It was apparently early April that a petition was written specifically for Norwich on change.org that had to do with the removal of trees from Mohegan Park to stop the removal of the trees. So there's going to be a portion of the beginning of the council meeting that they will devote to hearing residents talk about this on the 18th. Now, next week we were scheduled to have someone come on that is very knowledgeable about the program and talk about it. But I think I just found out that the studio is closed next week, so we're not going to be able to have him on then, but we will bring them on the week after, because I think it's important that the community actually sees the design for this botanical garden. Part of what was in this petition, after I spoke to the person that started the petition, and he did not want to come on and speak about it, which I personally thought that was strange. If you have a petition but you don't want to speak to it, I began looking a little bit deeper at that and realized that a lot of what was said, I mean, I read through almost every one of his writings.
Yeah, let me try to understand, because I still don't understand what you're saying.
Okay.
There is a plan by the Norwich Botanical Garden.
Chelsea Garden.
Chelsea Garden to
Chelsea
expand the garden.
To put the garden in. This has been,
Okay.
this is, the Chelsea Gardens has been on the books now
Right.
for 22 years.
And they want to put a garden where?
Up in Mohegan Park.
Which part of Mohegan Park?
You have from, all right, you know where the Rose Garden is?
Yes.
If you went up past the Rose Garden,
Mm-hmm.
that would be that area. The entrance to it would be from Wilderness Road on the other side. Like when we drive normally up to Mohegan Park from,
So it will extend from the present garden. What they're doing is expanding it all the way up.
they've had that sign
They
there
have
for
that
a
sign
while.
there already,
Right.
and that would be how many acres do you think that they're going to?
It's
But-
in here, but I think it's a total of 80 acres.
And a lot of those acreage are still not really made into gardens yet, because
Oh,
there are
there's nothing.
still
There's nothing there.
there are still trees, but these had been earmarked already. Is that
Right,
correct?
correct.
For the garden.
Correct.
So now the Chelsea Botanical Garden is just about ready to take the chainsaw and cut down those trees that
And they have.
supposedly.
And that's what started.
Now they have done a few of that.
Right, and that's what started the
And
petition.
so there is now a petition to
Stop.
cease and desist
Right,
cutting down the trees.
right.
Because of what reason? For
Well,
what reason?
according to the person that wrote the petition,
Yes.
it was illegal,
Okay.
that the citizens of Norwich had no representation in this,
Mm-hmm.
that it is against our own laws to have public land leased
Mm-hmm.
like this. So let's start with some of this.
Yes.
The fact that they have had no public participation.
Well, first of all, who's the Norwich Botanical Garden?
Chelsea Gardens.
Chelsea Garden. Who are they?
Chelsea Gardens. It was a nonprofit foundation that was formed.
It's private. It's not the city.
Well-
It's not government.
No, it is not government. Although it is, you have a lot of people that jumped on board very quickly. Because, I mean, it's like if Rotary did the Rose Garden.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's go back to the Chelsea
Okay.
Garden.
But
so it is a non-for-profit
it's a nonprofit,
organization
correct.
made up of Norwich citizens.
Made up
and
of
so on.
Norwich citizens.
And they had this plan. They've already passed through the Norwich City Council.
Correct.
That they're going to clear up this 80 acres of land to put their botanical garden, and
Right.
so it's been approved
That was 22 years ago.
22 years ago. And
Correct.
now they're starting on, and they did not do it 22 years ago, so might as well, better late than never.
So once they start
Well,
chopping down the
it wasn't
tree,
that. No, no. That don't. I don't want to minimize either the petitioner's concerns, even though I was really offended by some of the statements he made in there. But I don't want to minimize his concerns. At the same time, I don't want a lot of the misinterpretations that I'm already aware of to continue. There was a public participation. Obviously, he was not involved 22 years ago. You cannot miss, he said nobody's ever heard about it, the bulletin's never written anything about it, which is not quite true. I mean, that is not the facts, because nothing has happened there have been things that obviously have happened in 22 years, but it has not happened overnight. This was not a small, he describes it as an amusement park. They're not talking about an amusement park. They're not talking about a private entity that's going to be making big dollars from an amusement park. These were really Norwich citizens that really cared about the city, that saw that, you know, our park is underutilized, and really felt that if we had a world-class botanical garden, if we could create that, first of all, it would be a benefit to every citizen in this community. This is not an amusement. I mean, you and I have we've gone on vacation specifically to see botanical gardens.
we go to what's it, Brooklyn?
Brooklyn, we went up to Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, we have gone to places specifically to see some of these world-class botanical gardens. This group has spent I mean, they certainly, none of them have the money. This is not a large corporation. This is, you know, so they've been slowly trying to gather enough money to do one step at a time. So they did a study. They had the designs. They did a contest for the botanical garden design. The winner was, it was wonderful. The design for the botanical garden is so impressive that it would be a world-class destination to come to in Norwich. And I know when you put those words together, there are many out there that just want to start to laugh. A world-class destination in Norwich. I will repeat that. But you have had people that have been advocating for tourism for forever. Walter Way, among them. I have no idea how Walter feels about a botanical garden, but I do know how he, and most people that understand the economic benefits of tourism, that would understand what that could mean for the city. So to just go back to some of his issues, there certainly was, I wasn't involved, I don't know about it, but like most of the issues that happen, I'm sure if I asked him about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, I don't know how much information he could tell me. And then all of a sudden when it happens, you don't start crying, nobody said anything about it. Well, if you're not looking for it, sometimes if you're not paying attention to what's happening at City Hall or in Hartford or in Washington, you won't see it. But it was. And then to say that nobody ever knew about it, you have had that sign for Chelsea Gardens out there for how many years?
Well, so there is going to be a council meeting on
May 18th.
May 18th.
Right.
At 6:30.
Right, where people will be given the opportunity to talk.
And what is this meeting going to be for, Annie?
It's a regular council meeting.
Right.
But they're setting aside the beginning of the council meeting to hear citizen views on whether or not, if they have questions about the legality or what their questions are concerning this. I think that one of because he said you cannot lease public land. Well, of course you can. The marina is a perfect example. The marina belongs to the people of Norwich. Now, did I fight because it had a 100-year lease? Yes, I did. I didn't think we should lease it for $1 a year. However, we really didn't have the problems with access to the marina as long as it was in the control of private Norwich hands. Once it went to residents of this community, all of a sudden the tent is unavailable to civic organizations without paying exorbitant costs, and yet it's on city land. So, but in this case, for this issue, when he's talking about Mohegan Park, he forgets that you also have a gazebo up at Mohegan Park. You can't just go in and use it. You have to rent it. You have to pay a fee to use it. It is not, it's not a foreign concept. It is a facility that you could use for your personal purpose, if you so choose, within a public area to go and use. So, and then to take it even further, I have no idea how Chelsea Gardens plans to have their admission fees. They might have something for residents that want to come in and just walk around and not go into any of the structures, not go in and look at any of their parks and gardens. And if they don't wish to use it, that's fine. There may be another, separate fee for residents if they want to use them. But to begin to say this was illegal is not correct. I mean,
From what I can hear from you, Bonnie, it looks like that this whole thing is all too late. And you just cannot revive a negative, your wish of not doing this when it's been decided 22 years ago. So,
and been worked on since.
So I'm not even sure why the council is even
I think
entertaining the opening up of questionings when there is really nothing that they will do, for the simple reason that it had already been acted upon 22 years ago. What are they going to do, reverse the decision that was made 22 years ago? And
I
also
think that
replant the trees that they just, that they just cut down and put it back?
I think that the reason that they are doing this is because they are responsive to concerns of citizens.
Of one person.
Well, but he's gotten a lot of people riled up with very bad information, and I think the one thing that he did not disclose was the fact that it's, in his case, one of the things that I found out was, well, his property abuts it. So to me, it looked like it was a case of not in my backyard.
Oh, I would like it to be in my backyard.
I would love it to be in my backyard.
I've got a huge garden that I can stroll every morning.
I know.
Take my dog out.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? You're right. But for him, apparently, he's been using Mohegan Park like it was his personal backyard.
Well, then it's just an improvement of his backyard.
And now, because the trees were chopped down, it caused, and for him not to have ever noticed the big sign that just says Chelsea Gardens right before you turn into where he lives.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that was the Chelsea Garden.
That was it?
With the trees, yeah.
With the trees.
Well, anyways, let's move on.
But, okay, so we do have that.
So let's go to that council meeting and just find out exactly what is going on.
So the week after that, we will have someone here that will have the blueprints and the diagrams and talk a little bit more about what it is, and we'll talk about what happened at City Council.
I'd be glad to hear what the Chelsea Garden is planning on doing, because if it's going to be a world-class botanical garden, then I'd like to see that very rare plant that only blooms every 100 years or something like that. It smells like a corpse.
It smells like a corpse.
Yeah. Anyways.
It's an interesting, I think the proposal's interesting. We'll be very pleased to have them come in. The last thing I wanted to bring up was our last guest was with
the
anti-corruption group that's trying very hard to push through the American Anti-Corruption Act. And after reading through it and recognizing everything that it does, I was very impressed. I mean, if you can imagine having an act that was actually enforceable, that prohibited our congressmen and senators from acting on any issue if they have if the person that's going to benefit, the special interest that benefits, had given them, a contribution, or they had worked to influence their election,
Well,
they would not be able to vote on it.
let me backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
We already have those laws. What do you think happened to our beloved Governor Rowland?
Those, not all of them.
And now they have this
They do
Senate
have some, Ben, but-
president of New York, the New York State, the Chicago mayor, or was he a mayor or governor?
Yeah.
Right. So there's already an anti-corruption criminal
They're not,
law
right,
in the books.
but they don't go far enough. When you can have influence, because those were very blatant. Those were very blatant. The contractor came in and did somebody's house.
Yes.
Okay, that's really blatant corruption.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different, the kind of corruption that we're talking about. That well, how many? Let's even Tesla was a good example. When he was trying to get the contract for the SpaceX, what happened? The gentleman that was going to decide who gets the contract basically told Elon Musk that, well, are you going to hire me? And I'll work for you. And Elon Musk said, hell no. And so he went to, who was it? Boeing.
Yeah.
Boeing. And Boeing said, yeah, we'll hire you.
Vice president, immediately.
He was immediately made the vice president, so guess who gets the contract?
Well, those are ex-government employees.
That is also covered in this
that
thing.
just become a turnstile.
Then let's look at our ex-senators, our ex-representatives. How many of them have turned around and have then worked for major corporations?
But again, that they would say, well, I have the freedom to work wherever I want to.
Except
so
that
the
you already
same
know.
As,
I know, but you know how they got their job.
VA Secretary Princepi. He got out of becoming the VA Secretary and worked for Pfizer.
Worked for Pfizer. They all get good jobs.
And
at any rate, we're almost closing.
Yeah,
I did just
that's
get a
right.
signal, but I am going to send this to the City Council, just so that we could have the Norwich Anti-Corruption Resolution. Resolutions are non-binding, but what it does do is help to promote.
It puts something on paper that this is where you stand on this particular issue.
And will
And
help
there's
maybe,
no-
hopefully, get both a state and federal
Yes.
law for this kind of corruption. And
Give
we have
approval.
just run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
So next week we won't be here because the
Studio will be
the place
closed.
will be closed. So
I
we'll
will
see you a
try
week
to-
after that, and we'll see if we can have a guest that will talk more about
Chelsea Garden.
Chelsea Garden.
Okay. Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
This is Norwich Confidential with your host,